I've heard it where like, your time as an adjuster or your time doing this or something, you can trust me. I'm an attorney.
What about that? Should we avoid that? Because I think a lot of people think it's a positive to be sympathetic. Things to avoid was inconsistency in behavior and actions. You should avoid that. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Jason, and I'm back with David White. And today we're going to talk about the misconceptions of building trust. This is a topic that is very needed, in my opinion, and I'm excited to talk about it. As far as who we're aiming at with this, who should listen to this particular podcast or who could benefit from the information that would be provided, I really think it's anybody. I think we're all in a position where trust is important, whether you deal with clients, whether you're a supervisor dealing with coworkers that you have have charge over, or in our industry, like our background, especially dealing with injured workers. From a claims administrative kind of perspective. So I think to start off with this topic, we should probably get into starting off with a basic definition of trust, or what is it, David? What is it?
Yeah.
What's trust?
We use the word a lot. When I went in to do this, I don't think I've ever really looked up a definition. Like it's that people trust you. That's what trust is. But, when I did, I found that like the first two words of what I found as definition were really compelling. It's a firm belief in the reliability, truthability, or strength of someone or something. And that firm belief is the part that really caught me, where it is a subjective thing for the person you're interacting with. It's what they believe. So you may believe you're doing everything to gain someone's trust. Your ability, your kind of trust ability is based on how they believe and perceive you, though. And so being able to realize that and say, okay, these are the tools that kind of can help me build trust, but ultimately it will be up to, I need to be thinking about how the other person is perceiving all of my actions, all my interactions, in order for me to actually build trust. Obviously, trust super important in pretty much any interpersonal relationship, whether it's business, personal relationships. I think even in society, do we trust our institutions? Do we trust our governments? Do you believe that they can do the job they're saying they're going to do? That they're a strong institution, that people aren't just going to, potentially say, forget it. It's not that big of a deal anyway. I'm not going to pay my taxes. I don't believe the IRS actually does anything. For example.
Right. Are you slipping in how you really feel there, Dave? Or?
Right. Yeah. This is one of those sly podcast things here. But really, when you take that the next step further and you think about, okay, so why is it so important, or how does that play in? Trust actually gives you a stable platform for communication. If you're not able to trust who you're talking to, one, you're probably not really communicating. You're not really listening or actively listening or caring what that other person even says, because you don't trust the information coming out anyway. And so trust is how we get level and say, I trust this is what your intentions are, whether you believe they're good or bad. Having that ability to say, yeah, I'm not confused about this other person, that's the only way we can move forward with things. And that's why in relationships you hear, communication and trust is number one. Otherwise, how do you know where you stand? Um,
Yeah, no, I really like that definition because I think it can go over our heads sometimes that is based on the other person's belief. Like if someone trusts me, it's not just that I feel like I'm doing trustworthy things. So I think that's important in a definition. I think of I know definitely I've come from situations and I've seen others like, oh, that person trusts me, with no confirmation of that, like whatsoever. So having that definition kind of helps with that. The other interesting thing was what you said about society, in our institutions. I think particularly maybe for a lot of our listeners, since we're in the work comp industry, um, understanding that like the institutions that you are a part of actually play a role in the trust when you're interacting, for example, with an injured worker. Sometimes just being a part of a claims administrative company comes with that person's belief. What their trust is kind of based on may just be on that in past experiences, and you have that uphill battle. So understanding that definition like is key to really like being able to navigate. So I think that's really cool. And also like I think that is only based like it helps you understand it's not just based on you and your actions. And I think that's a common misconception, which kind of gets me to the next another good thing to kind of get into, and that is what are some of the common misconceptions about building trust.
Yeah, so we've identified four main ones that we want to talk about today. Anyway, there's numerous misconceptions, but the biggest ones we kind of see, that it's quickly built, that you're keeping secrets for somebody, that once it's broken, it can't be repaired, um, and that I guess kind of on top of that, that once it's lost completely, you can't regain it. So I want to talk a couple minutes about each of those kind of misconceptions and um, how they can be a problem. How thinking along these terms can either lead to not gaining trust, or maybe even worse, kind of getting this fake trust where people think, yeah, we're in good shape. She definitely trusts me. And then 10 minutes later, that's not there. So,
Yeah.
uh,
And what about the like the built quickly thing? Like
right.
it's an interesting thing because we've seen in what we do, because it's a lot of communicating with people. That we've seen people walk away from phone calls believing immediately they talk to the person for 2 minutes and believe that they trust them. Um, why do you think that's a misconception? Or kind of like what you were saying? Yeah, why is that? It seems like it would be common sense that it's not built quickly, but I agree that it's completely like a misconception that it is.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times when we have what we would label like a good interaction or a nice interaction with somebody, um, that on the surface level you can see that as trust. That yeah, she told me I could call her back whenever. So she trusts me, she likes me, and missing out on the fact that what did you talk about though? Did you talk about an issue that she's now expecting you to call back with a solution for, or at least an answer to? Because you definitely will not have trust if you call back without that answer, or if you call back and don't even realize your conversation, although nice and ended pleasantly, um, it's clear you weren't actually listening and you didn't take away from it what that person took away from it. And that's why it's
Mm.
this slow build. Every interaction, you have the opportunity to build trust and to say, look, I'm in this for what I say I'm in it for. When I talk to you about helping you, in workers' comp, move through this issue with your doctor, that you're actually transparent, and the next time you talk to them, you've made progress on the things you've talked about. That's what builds trust, not necessarily just like, oh, you don't like your doctor. Okay, I won't tell him. And that kind of leads into that next one, right? The trust is about keeping secrets. This is more um, kind of in the everyday, right? That I can trust him with this information,
Right.
and not necessarily. I mean, trust is kind of a spectrum thing, right? Like,
Right.
you may trust, let's say nobody uses cash anymore, but let's say you gave the cashier a 20, got back your change, whatever. She realizes that she changed you, kind of flags you down, walks out, make sure that you get that money. You're like, I really, really trust my interactions here now. But you
Right.
probably aren't in the position to be like, I'm going to have her babysit my 4-year-old quite yet.
Right. Right.
So there is that spectrum, and somebody you may trust with information that, they're not going to tell who I don't want them to tell about something, doesn't mean that they're also trusting that you're doing everything that you say you're doing.
Right.
And I think that's an important piece there, especially if you're administering somebody's claim for them. They may trust you with some information that was hard for them to tell you.
Right.
And it is how you deal with that information that actually builds a deeper level of trust. Okay, now I trust him enough to tell him this. But if nothing actually gets done, if it's not heard, if it's not actually addressed, then what would be the point for me to trust him with any other information?
Right. Yeah. No, that kind of, you know, like once that kind of almost kind of gets into um like the another misconception, and that's that the once you said it before, like once something is lost or is broken, because just like it's a slow build, like most of the time, I think another misconception is really not on our list is that it takes a major event for trust to be lost.
Mm-hmm.
Just like it's a slow build, it's usually like these slow little letdowns that kind of erode it. But once it's lost, that it cannot be regained. This is something that I see in my experience of I don't even want to say how long, but just seeing many interactions, thousands and thousands with the injured workers, is that like when people have made a mistake, and this is from I've seen it from a claims adjuster to an injured worker, from a claim supervisor to an adjuster too. And that's like once you do something, maybe usually every time I've seen it actually unintentional, that loses the trust. It takes a big hit at the trust that you've built with this person. And that more than I see people don't overtly say that, hey, I don't think I can ever get the trust back, but their actions kind of dictate, in my experience, that this misconception truly exists, and it's like super super prevalent. And um it's sad because it's so not true. It's such an opportunity, and I've always looked at it that way. Some of my best experiences, closest relationships that I've had with claims adjusters over the years, or clients, anything like that, actually something went wrong, and it gave me an opportunity, to actually build trust that may not have been there before. So it can definitely be regained, and I see that a lot through the actions of people more than their kind of like overt, like under standing. They'll just start avoiding the person and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
um it's such a huge opportunity and a great rewarding one if you understand that it's a complete misconception that that trust is just like lost and never giving back, and especially in the context of business interactions and those sort of things. You probably aren't going to do something so personal, so egregious that that you can't get the trust back.
Mm-hmm. All right. So now that we have those misconceptions out there, I think there's some things that we need to go forward now and just kind of talk about things that should be avoided when you're trying to build trust, when you're maybe your first interactions with a new person. And a lot of people may even think these kind of go into misconceptions too. But it's just things that we've identified that you really probably need to avoid altogether if you're thinking that this is helping build some trust. The first one is to avoid superficial gestures.
Please.
We've had even our own employees say things like, "You can trust me, believe me."
Right.
Just these superficial things. There's nothing behind it. I've heard, I've heard it where, like, your time as an adjuster or your time doing this or something, you can trust me. I'm an attorney.
Right. Yeah, I've been doing this for 15 years or
Right.
whatever it is. Yeah.
Right. And I think probably the average person, doesn't think about when somebody says I'm an attorney or something that, like, oh, that means that they have standards set by the California State Bar and they would never try to do anything to. They're like, yeah, no, yeah. So you like do PI or something? Okay.
Right.
What does that mean? Right. So leaving it there is very superficial to just say, you can trust me. I've been doing this for 25 years. Have you been lying for 25 years? I don't know you.
And sometimes it's well intended too, right, David?
It's almost always well intended.
we've heard. I mean, we've heard advice people in an attempt to build rapport with to get to trust. Find things in common. Find 3 things in common or something like that. With the person that you're talking to. And that's, in my opinion, it's just a completely superficial gesture, just to find, you hear a dog in the background. Oh, you're a pet lover too. And, the purpose of why you're talking to that person matters. There's probably some substantive reason why you're actually communicating with a person, and that's the role that they see you in, and your trust is going to come out of that role, not necessarily that you both have dogs or something like that,
right? That's it may be a way to break the ice with someone that you don't have I guess like a reason to already be connected with. Right. So we both have dogs. Our kids both play Little League.
Right.
Why don't we hang out more? Right. That makes sense in our kind of regular life. But when you're and probably you don't necessarily trust that person because of that. It starts a conversation though.
Right.
Particularly in claims administrating, you already have the connection. The connection's the claim. The person got hurt and you're in charge of administering it.
Right.
Gaining trust is different than having some kind of connection that doesn't relate to what our connection is right now. And it's going to be really hard, like you said, to handle someone's issue if the only thing you guys have in common is you both have dogs. I would still go to the cat person adjuster if I was the injured worker, if I was not getting the needs I had met on my claim. It wouldn't be that big of a deal for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, that kind of rolls into kind of like the next one a little bit too, because I think this really kind of stems from a lack of empathy, right? Like a gesture should probably come from something, should be informed based on the other person that you're interacting with, not just like pre-planned like thing. So I think one of the things to avoid is what lack of empathy, right?
Yeah, just not. And it kind of goes back to the beginning too, with not understanding how this person, what their experience is in interacting with you. It's very important that you have that idea, and the best way is to ask or actively listen when somebody is talking to you about an issue, um, and understanding this is the most important thing for them right now, and I know that because they said it, and they can trust me because I was able to have that communication with you where we did say, okay, verify with you, this is the issue, this is how we can get it done. It should take this amount of time. Um, and making sure that nothing's left out, that they're fully kind of able to feel in good hands. That okay, good. I know that the things I say aren't left on deaf ears. I'm not told that this is just a normal process and you need to not worry about it, because it is the most important thing at that point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's easy to do in claims administrators actually have a lack of empathy, but without not like from, I don't think it's a thing that people are trying to do. I think,
Mhm.
a claim comes up. This is claim, number like, 800 for you this year. And it's a process that,
And
uh,
it is the
uh,
same process.
yeah, it is the same process that particularly for a claims adjuster or any claim administrative staff, they're very good at, right? Administering claims. So um, that means that and they know that the person, especially when it's an injured worker, doesn't really know this process. So it's easy just to like take control and take the driver's seat and just say, hey, you're in good hands. I'm a 4-star general adjuster up in here,
Mhm.
and I've been doing this for a long time. I know you're doing. I got you, and just kind of take them on your ride. And so, like a lot of the lack of empathy that I see is completely unintentional. Um, unlike that's why it bothers me sometimes when we see articles about like adjusters need to feel more and care more. It's really more about like awareness than
Yeah,
it is like not caring about people. You don't do this job if you I don't think
you have
you hate
to.
people.
Right. And when you
Right.
have the claim load that you have, you care about them, but you also understand the efficiency that you need to have a conversation in.
You have to be practical as a
I
as a
have to
claims
move
administrator.
forward.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
we've heard that too, right? Like some of the referrals we get are an adjuster who deeply cares about the injured worker. And that's why they've sent it to us. This person needs more time
Right.
to go over this than I really have. Can you
Yeah,
guys
absolutely.
assist with really finding out? Because she does have an issue with the CNR amount, but I haven't been able to really communicate with her to figure out what it is. Um,
So what about let's talk
and
about another one real quick. Oh,
yeah, I
go.
was gonna.
You can finish your point. Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say the other easy thing to do was the next thing I think we had is to be defensive, and
Yeah,
how
yeah,
that
yeah.
can
I was just about
really
to say
erode trust.
defensiveness.
When something comes up, have it taking that automatic defensive situation. Well, I didn't break any laws or anything like that.
Right, right, right.
um, trust is built on reliability and accountability. And so any kind of sense that you may be skirting that accountability, that erodes trust right away. And it's something people are, I don't know, man. It goes back to caveman days or something that we're like, defensive. Yep,
Right.
can't trust them. Uh, but I think you had something to add on it also.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, yeah, the way like you should absolutely avoid it, and you should just eliminate defensiveness from like any. It should be your first that should go off like a light bulb. That if you feel like you're defending yourself, that you're probably you are just say I'm destroying trust. Like, don't even call it defensiveness, call it trust destroying, and put that in your head and avoid that, because the immediate response, and we all know this, when someone is behaving defensively or their first response is a defensive response, um, hey, I've been trying to get in touch with you for 2 weeks and you never answer your phone, and your first response is something like, yeah, well, I'm super busy and I have a lot of claims and, or whatever it is. That's not going to be good. It goes back. It's that lack of empathy starting to come up again, too, and all of those things are trust story. So I just wanted to add that, let's not even call it defensiveness. Just call it trust destroying. It's just what it is. It's like your biggest destroyer of trust. Makes you seem super shady. So even when it's well intended, like you have a reason, it takes skill, and that's a whole nother podcast. You have to have skilled ways to be able, especially as a claims administrator, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have things to explain that seem like it's your fault when it's not. You have to have skilled ways to do that understands the psychology of the person receiving it, right? Which is all about empathy, which is what empathy is all about.
Right. And part of that too is another one of the things that we would say to avoid if you're going to try to build trust. It's lack of transparency. The reason, once you have the permission of the person to explain why it's been 2 weeks, and in a non-defensive way, not this is why, because I have all these other claims. I get to you when I get to you. But sometimes it is important for that person to know why it took that long, or why, even a doctor appointment or something is taking so long to schedule. Having a transparent way to do that is one of the ways that you can have empathy. You can explain, and you can kind of impart some of that empathy for that person, that it's not just a click of a button. You're just explaining the process better, so that they have a transparent way of saying, oh, okay, so I see. So, you've already sent the authorization, but they now have to call me. And that's what the holdup is. So if I call them, will that move things along? The adjuster can let you know, yeah, that would really help, actually. I'll shoot you an email as soon as I get it over to them, or I'll CC you, and then you should be able to contact them right away. Now they can trust that, okay, we're working on this together. And on top of that, I know the process. Everybody told me how complex this was and how hard it was, but individual issues generally have pretty simple decisions to make. You can do this or this or this, and this would be the process for those decisions. How would you like to proceed? And then answer any questions that are there. Now you're really building this trust up, in a way that if somebody just sat with a doctor they didn't like, kept going back, got through their claim, came to settlement, and it's not something that they trust is right, we're either going to see QMEs, litigation, whatever else, instead of a trusted partner that they've already said, hey, I'm kind of having this issue, and we're given decisions and pathways to move through. So transparency is a big one to gain that trust. Opens a lot of doors.
What about feeling sorry? What about just feeling sorry, feeling sympathy, pity? What about that? Should we avoid that? Because I think a lot of people think it's a positive to be sympathetic.
Yeah,
but I don't think you think so.
I don't think so. I think for depending what your goal is there, right? If you're trying to build trust with somebody, a sympathetic approach probably is wasting time. Pitying somebody because they've been injured doesn't help them get to their goal. And I don't know what the goal is. I don't think we would assume that the goal is for everybody to feel bad for them, for that injured worker. It probably isn't. It's right. Probably to get The benefits entitled to them and to get back to work. And if they can act like this never happened to them in 4 years, that'd probably be a pretty good thing for a lot of people.
But
Um,
David, shouldn't we feel sorry for people? Shouldn't we feel bad if they're hurt?
I
Shouldn't
think
we do that?
understanding how they're feeling and helping them get to how they want to feel is a better move, and it's going to add a lot more trust. I think that knowing someone feels bad for me versus knowing somebody understands my situation and has the pathway to help me, I'm going with that person that can help me every time.
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, think of it like uh, uh, like a bad breakup or something, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you want to mope and feel bad, and your buddy calls you up. Oh man, I'm so sorry that happened. That's terrible. Now you're like adding on to my own mopiness with that guy's, and now I have to worry about like, oh man, I brought down that dude's getting married in 2 weeks. He feels bad for me now that I don't have a date, and now like the
And he
wedding's
said it was
ruined.
terrible. I just thought it
Right.
was like not that
Right.
cool.
Yeah.
Like,
It wasn't even as
yeah.
bad as I thought it was, but now he's saying it's really bad. And that can happen in claims a lot. I mean, I've seen
Mm-hmm.
that mistake come up where, yeah, I understand this back injury is like, it's your back. And,
Right.
and the guy's like, I just tweaked it a little bit. Is it
Right.
bad? Like,
Right.
or he's getting the maximum amount of TD, and you go into it going, yeah, I know you're only getting, the max rate, and that's like half of your normal pay. It might not be a problem. It may be something that the person just understands. That's the way it is. Great. Um, but I think always getting into the situation and talking about it with them and knowing where they're at instead of assuming that it's a terrible thing and letting them almost kind of stay down there,
Mm-hmm.
and leave them there actually ends up doing a lot worse off than
Service, yeah.
somebody that can say, hey man, how you doing, you want to go get dinner or something after a bad breakup, right? And he talks it out, and yeah, we're all good. You're feeling better. That's way better than yeah, man, I'm just here for you. I'm gonna bring ice cream over or whatever. Like, do they want that? And
Yeah.
if you're just assuming that they want to feel bad, you're probably not gaining a lot of trust with them, especially if they don't want to feel bad.
Yeah, no, that's so, there's a couple of things on this real quick. One, it just reminded me of a book that I got for both of my kids, and it's called The Rabbit That Listened. And long story short, it's about a little boy. He builds this like, I can't remember. I think it might be this big like thing out of blocks that was great. And as soon as he built it, he was sitting there proud of it. And then a bird came and swooped and like knocked it all down. Right. So the little boy was sad. And then like it was different animals that would come along, and the first animal was like, oh, that's so terrible, we should like cry or whatever. And then he, the boy is like, I don't feel like crying. And then that animal went away, kind of upset at the boy. And then the bear came over, is like, oh, this is so upsetting, we should be mad. And he didn't feel like being mad, and it goes on through these different kind of emotions through different animals. And finally a rabbit just came along and just sat next to him. And as he sat there quietly, then the little boy started talking, and the rabbit just like listened to him. And then the boy worked through all of those emotions that those other animals came by through on his own.
Mm-hmm.
It gave him the power to work through those emotions on his own. And then he finally got to realizing that he could build again, right? So
Yeah.
like that's what empathy does. versus like sympathy. You want to empower that person to rise up, and sympathy kind of does the opposite. There's this great
Hmm.
quote by Brene Brown where it says, empathy fuels connection, sympathy drives disconnection. And I can see why this would be hard for a lot of people to grasp because we're so used to sympathizing. Like we do it a lot.
Yeah.
We see bad situations. You go, oh, when we're watching the news, sometimes there's nothing we can do but just actually sympathize because, it's something happening in another part of the world, or there is something we can do. But we just sympathize. That doesn't help the situation that you feel bad for at all. And when you're dealing with someone in an actual interaction, Brene Brown goes further to say that, like, I actually have this written down. Empathy is a skill that can bring people together and make people feel included, while sympathy creates an uneven power dynamic and can lead to more isolation and disconnection.
Hmm.
And long story short, that's why you should avoid sympathy, particularly for claims adjusters dealing with injured workers. But even if you're a risk manager dealing with your claims administrator, you're a claims supervisor, whatever it is, and whoever you're dealing with, um, think about that sympathy kind of creates this disconnection because now like I feel bad for you because I'm better off. I'm better off than you. You
Mm-hmm.
understand what I'm saying? We don't think about it that way, but that's the dynamic that's at play there, and it's just when it really comes down to it, completely unhelpful. So there's
Yeah.
several reasons you want to avoid it.
That's what I was gonna say too. Like it's really, really hard to take an approach that you're being someone's advocate, that you're empowering them to do something from a sympathetic approach. You're actually kind of
Absolutely.
just telling them you should feel this way.
Absolutely.
However it is you think they should feel. It's a much more inward instead of outward approach. And to truly advocate for them and help them, it's going to require empathy.
Yeah, I think we'll have a whole episode on that. That's a deep dive, and we can get super into that. And I actually we need to put that on the list to do for sure. Um, I guess the other thing is like factors that actually build trust, right? Um,
Positive side
and I'm
here.
I'm going to go through and kind of list these quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and then like some of the main factors, and then maybe we'll hop into a couple of them in more detail. But consistency, competence, empathy and understanding, open communication, embracing vulnerability, and admitting mistakes. And I'll start with consistency. Um, Consistency is obviously like it's kind of like one of the things that was one of the things to avoid was inconsistency in behavior and actions. You should avoid that. Um, your consistency is good because it long I guess in short it's really reliability is to people, and
Mm-hmm.
reliability is a huge factor in trust. um and that's pretty self-explanatory. That really doesn't need some deep insight by me. Institutions, things, people, things that we trust are reliable. If the stoplight was inconsistent,
Mm-hmm.
um it would be chaos, right? We trust that it's going to work correctly. It's not going to tell all sides to go at the same time, right? So consistency is just really important. The next thing I think is competence. So this gets overlooked sometimes because in every dynamic, it's not really like super important. It is, but like it's not like as important like it's something like claims administration, or you think about it like it's really important with your doctor, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's probably more important in their personality and how happy they are all the time, and if they're super bubbly or not, and that sort of thing. A lot of the times the person that you trust is not like that at all. They're not like you at all, right? And that's important to understand. That those are other misconceptions that we have to get into, that you have to be a certain way and that sort of thing. You can be yourself, be consistent, and be competent. For claims professional, it's really important to understand that um, like the hit to your competency when you make a mistake, because it's a job where there will be mistakes made, and some of them are not, they don't have any impact on the claim, but that's not how the injured worker feels. They don't,
Mm-hmm.
that mistake matters to them. You sent them a letter and it had an extra, missing a zero or something like that, but you say, oh, it's okay, your check still like went out the right way. Well, why is the letter wrong? You guys can't get a letter right. um um why that may not seem like a big deal for the other person is speaking to your competence. So, like, the thing that will build trust is making sure that when you are doing a really good job at your job, but when you do make a mistake, that you understand that that the way that they view your competence is at risk, and you're reassuring, and that it
Mm-hmm.
isn't. You're taking accountability. Accountability is directly related to that, to your competence as well. Too, people don't really view people that aren't really, well, in most instances, there are some exceptions, aren't accountable as competent. uh,
Yeah,
is
I
there something
think
you want to
that,
add there?
yeah, just that point you make about mistakes. Like, there is a, I don't know, there's something that I've seen come up a lot where hopefully they won't notice.
Oh yeah,
Hopefully they don't bring up that we had the wrong amount on the notice, so that we don't have
right.
to send another notice.
Another one.
But if you catch that even before the injured worker does, why not
Wow.
give them a call? Say, hey, you're going to get a notice. The number's going to be wrong. It actually should have this extra zero that wasn't on there. Do you want me to send the amended notice, or are you kind of confident that this is the amount? You're okay with that?
Right.
Before it's even a problem, now they already trust you. Okay, good. Somebody's double checking this stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like a
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
typo in today's age, especially, is pretty understandable.
Right.
Um, Thinking I won't notice a typo, now I'm thinking, wait, why don't they
Yeah.
think? What else don't they think I'm going to notice?
Right. Yeah. No. Absolutely. Yeah. No. That's interesting. I like that point. Another factor in building, factors that truly build trust is empathy and understanding. Right. So we kind of went into that a little bit, um, already. Understanding what empathy is really important for this. And once again, it is a skill. So that's a whole nother topic, another episode. And a lot of our content is built around, actually, how do you make empathy something tangible, a skill that you can deploy and use, that actually gets like consistent result. It's not just a feeling. A lot of people confuse empathy with sympathy, and they're not the same things. So, actual empathy and understanding is what's going to drive that connection, the feeling of connection, which is like strongly, obviously going to be correlated with trust. And connections can be made quick. Trust takes some time, but positive connections, can be made relatively, pretty quickly when you're skilled in empathy. Like you said, trust is a spectrum. People don't have to trust you with their life to be able to, be involved in an interaction with you. Back to kind of what you were saying, David, like open communication was one of my next one. So this had to do with just like freely sharing information. I like that kind of proactive approach. Like, hey, you're going to, because that's one of the skills, like from negotiation, that we kind of understand, like kind of getting ahead of something, the way that
Mm-hmm.
people may be feeling, right? Like if you make a mistake, it's better to just say, hey, if you have to tell them about it, hey, you're probably going to question my competence when I tell you this, but this is what happened, right? Because they're going to think that when
Mm-hmm.
you tell them the mistake, when you tell them ahead of time, you use that as disarming, and it like connects with accountability, like you were saying, and it makes your communication feel open, because it is. right? You're not trying
Yeah.
to hide or gloss over that it does speak to your competence and that you made a mistake, right?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
and you're allowing the other side to see that you understand this mistake could erode their trust. The
Correct.
sentence starts with you may think, you're going to
Right.
think
Right.
what you may think. Um,
Right.
Rather than, hey, I sent you the wrong thing.
Right.
Automatically, you made a mistake and now you had to call me and waste my time. I don't understand. Instead of,
Right.
you're probably going to think that I had this. Already they say, good, this person's taking the time to say they're perceiving how I'm actually going to accept this letter, how I'm going to see this letter. You already know. And, maybe you can email them the corrected letter before they even get it. Throw it away when it comes in. You don't even need to open it now. There's just so many other possibilities that go uncovered when you just kind of whatever, hope they don't care or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's an empathy pro tip. That's one of those things that kind of gets into what I was saying, it being kind of skilled based and understanding how to actually use empathy and interactions to keep fostering a connection and building trust. Um, the other one we kind of touched on a little bit, I guess, like embracing vulnerability and admitting mistakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that really, really, really is a trust builder. Now, you, people have to understand there's a fine line. Like in my experience from as a claims adjuster, from having a company that does what we do, that's like completely built on communication and trust, and that sort of thing. Um, I've definitely had people on my team as a claims examiner and people on my team, unfortunately, in this environment that didn't last very long. Um, like think that if you just make a whole bunch of mistakes and as long as you're vulnerable about them and admit them, that like that's okay, like you're in compliance with how to build trust. Competence is still on there, folks.
And consistency.
Right, you still have to be competent and consistent, because then that gives you the grace for your mistakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So but embracing that vulnerability sometimes is hard as a claim adjuster, and I've seen a variation. There's definitely I do think that there's a misconception that adjusters are just like cold-hearted and all jaded and that sort of thing, and not vulnerable. I believe that that's a misconception. There's definitely some that are that are like that, right? And I think the vulnerability thing is like a bigger thing that I can see come with experience. And I think also like it's unintentional. I especially see this with supervisors and managers and that sort of thing. It just seems like the ability to admit a mistake is like almost non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
And when when it's obvious that you made a mistake, um, and you don't use that opportunity to admit it and acknowledge the impact that it may have on the others that you are interacting with or that it affects, boy, does that just make your trust score dwindle. And when you're not vulnerable, um, you don't want to. I would say, because there's some cliche things about this. The bigger thing I think that people miss is that you missed the opportunity to actually build empathy for yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
that also helps build trust too, right? If people empathize with you, not just you empathizing with them. So, because then they understand that you're a human. This is especially important for supervisors and managers, especially in the claims world. So I think it's one of the more challenging environments to be kind of like a supervisor or a manager. So embracing that vulnerability and admitting your mistakes are things that are really, really help people feel connected to you as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that is a big factor in building trust, right? I think we can kind of we got into that. There's a whole bunch of factors,
Mhm.
but one of the things I think that's challenging now in building trust is like now we're like in a digital age. Like a lot of the and a lot of the tips around building trust and fostering communication rely on being talking to the person verbally, being in person. We all know that that's a lot better. But today, like you might not, you could go through a whole complete interaction or process with somebody, a whole claim, something, and never have actually spoken with them, and it's all digital. So, talk to us about trust in the digital age, Dave.
Yeah, that's definitely an evolution, right? More digital communication. I was rear-ended recently, right? I think I talked to one person throughout the process at one point in time, and then
Mm,
took it into the body shop. That was all taken care of for me. They called me when my car was ready.
right.
They emailed me an agreement. Yeah, this is all good. Nothing else. Boom, done. Um, that is this very uh, 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 what we have now are also kind of quicker interactions.
Mm,
It's more expected that this is the issue I'm having right now. If I can get that to you succinctly in writing, you can respond to me succinctly in writing. We're all good. And it leaves out a lot of, without looking for them anyway, a lot of the factors that can build trust. So there's
mhm,
two things I think about with the kind of digital communication. One being to remember that trust is built over time. It's not a one-time interaction. So if a mistake's made, something happens, and I shoot a text over or something like that and get a quick answer, yes, we'll take care of it right away. Okay, maybe you built some trust there that, oh, they took care of it quickly. That was nice.
mhm.
But the mistake was still there in the first place. And I'm still like, I'm going to have to text him every time. What's going on?
Right.
The consistency of that, though, that over multiple interactions, it's always this way, is something that builds trust. That
Yes.
they're very competent on it. Doesn't happen often. When it does, they take care of it right away. That sounds like a Yelp review. Uh,
Right. It does. Yeah, and
and
that's what you want to come from that positive reviews,
right,
right?
that's not going to be a 1-star review of that.
Right.
Um, the other thing that you can really think about when we're saying, okay, we're going to build trust on this, is looking for opportunities to pick up the phone, to respond to that text with, this might be a little bit of a complicated answer. Would it be okay if we set aside some time to actually talk about it? Or, hey, look, that my answer likely would lead to more questions on your end. I think maybe, with your permission, it'd be better for us to just have a call, and to discuss it that way. And if you think about this, like I know, most people now, anyway, that I'm aware of, you get that cell phone call from a number that you don't recognize right away, and you're doing something else. You're kind of like,
Hmm.
all right, I'm going to let that one ring. If that same number texts you within 2 minutes and it's like, hey, Dave, sorry, it's John. I'm on a different phone today. You call him right back, right?
Right.
Um, Texting and digital communication can build the trust that hey, look, will we communicate with you the way you want to be communicated with, but in this case we would like to have the opportunity to actually speak with you because whatever open transparent reason is there.
Hmm.
But always looking for those opportunities is how you can build trust, even if it seems like most of what you're going to do to handle this claim is going to be through digital media with the injured worker. Especially now as some apps come out and things like that. Um, there's still a problem with consistent, competent communication happening right, as fast as the injured worker expects it, um, and having the transparency to say this really isn't something that you're probably going to be able to self help with. The FAQ section probably isn't going to get you a full answer. I want to make sure you actually get the full answer and you're able to ask me questions. Now you're building trust. I'm not sending you off to try to find this on your own.
Right.
In addition to that, maybe you do for the first thing, right?
Right.
But I want to make sure you don't get left with questions still happening and that we're on the line together. I can hear in your voice whether or not this makes sense to you or not, or if I need to explain something differently, because sometimes that's what it is.
Right.
The words themselves make sense. They don't make sense to me in this situation, and somebody just has to change what it is to help that happen. So, two big ones there, though. One, make sure that you're consistent with those digital responses and communications, and two, look for opportunities to actually be able to interact voice to voice or face to face if possible.
Yeah, and I think you're starting to see like in many industries are starting to change. I know for ourselves when we're picking vendors or providers and that sort of thing, like there's their support, for example, like we want them to have, even if it's a tech product, we're like, can I hop on the phone though if I get stuck and actually talk to somebody? Because I'll pay more for that. Like and I trust more that this company cares more about servicing me as a customer. They don't. So I think you're starting to see that shift. At first it was all about like deflecting interactions from customers, and even with like injured workers, I think that can be one of the consequences, because they're kind of late to the digital wave, but that's starting to come, is that like the mistake can be made to just like think about deflection.
Mm-hmm.
And not look for those opportunities to actually say, hey, like this person may need to be guided. This stuff is foreign to an injured worker. They already are having a tough time. They got a lot of other things to deal with. Maybe I need to try to pick up the phone and talk to them and make that better connection, and then keep building that trust. Your influence is going to be predicated on largely based on the trust that you have with that individual. So that takes us to our conclusion. That's one of the main kind of insights and takeaways right there, I guess, basically, is that the big takeaway is that your influence is going to be like predicated on trust, right? And that misconceptions of trust can lead to actions that we want to avoid, um, such as like superficial gestures and defensiveness and inconsistency, lack of transparency, and we talked about sympathy. I hope that's one that a lot of people learned about today. I don't think people view that as something to avoid. And the big takeaways are going to be like the things that you should do, right? Be consistent, really work on your competence, particularly in the claims administrative world. People want claims adjusters to be like everything. And I kind of see that push coming again. People want them to be like coaches and basically little mini psychologists and stuff like that. Ultimately, though, they have to have an actual real good core competency, and that's what an injured worker is expecting from them. They're not really expecting them to be like a life coach, but I think they are expecting them to be competent and administer their claim accurately, fair, timely, that sort of thing, right? Empathy is key to everything. Your whole approach needs to be based on empathy, and then having open and transparent communication, being proactive in your communication, and embracing those mistakes as opportunities to really, really make a connection and build a level of trust that you probably weren't even aware that you could build with somebody. They probably might actually expedite that process. And if you have the right attitude and disposition towards it. And it's a continuous process. Once you have it, doesn't mean your job is done. Somebody tells you, hey, you know what? I trust you with X, Y, and Z. You don't say job done. It's a continuous process, right? So I hope you found the information useful.
And if you lose it, right? We talked about that
Yeah.
too.
Oh yeah. Right.
I just don't
Right.
trust you anymore.
Right.
There's still
like,
ways to get that back.
Absolutely. So, like, thanks for tuning in. And David, I'll let you take that outro for us.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. We encourage you to rate us, leave us any comments, tell us if you agree, disagree, specifically on this one about trust.
Especially if you disagree. I want to hear those. I love those.
Yeah. And
that's how we learn.
Any ideas for us to talk about another subject, maybe related to trust or anything. It's really something that we're wanting to be able to provide this kind of content. We talk to thousands of improper injured workers, specifically about settlements, when things go wrong, when things go well. And we're trying to make sure that we're kind of able to put that information out there, help claims adjusters, claims professionals, risk managers understand where they're coming from and some of these tools to help move on. So, leave comments, share, and give us a rating. Thanks so much.
All right, everyone. Take care. Thank you.